Saeed's not going to.
Thanks, Charles, for letting me use your gardening supplies. I'll make sure I put it back in the garage. Man, tending to that lawn is a lot of work.
Tell you the truth, Jim, I'm more concerned about keeping this house.
What's going on?
Well, you know, Sarah lost her job 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Since we lost that income, the bills have been piling up, and we're so far behind. I don't want to lose the house because of back taxes. I don't know what to do.
I understand. The same thing happened to my sister and her husband when he lost his job. Do you know that the Wayne County Treasurer has plans and programs to help people stay in their homes?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
Yeah, go to www.treasure.waynecounty.com to see if you qualify.
Say that again.
www.treasure.waynecounty.com.
Got it.
Remember, they're here to help.
We're here to help.
Welcome to another edition of The Week That Was. I am Nancy Derringer, and I am filling in for Saeed, who is, I believe, currently involved in that scourge of white-collar life, a staff meeting. And he was not able to skip it. So I guess I'm going to be running the show unless I pass out from whatever. And so I welcome you to this edition, and let's go around the panel and talk to our usual folks. We have today to my left, but to the screen right is labor and community activist Barbara Ingalls, our usual troika of lawyers, Steve Fishman, Joel Sklar, and Bill Cycli. We have pollster Ed Sarpolus phoning in from Lansing, and down at the bottom with the whole world balancing on his narrow shoulders, we have Deadline Detroit co-founder Allan Lengel. And as usual, as it's been for the past several years, it has been an action-packed week. Just once, I want to come on the show and say, you know what? It was kind of boring. Let's knock off after 20 minutes, but that never happens. So shall we start with what is probably the biggest news for cable news this week, which was, of course, the New Hampshire primary, which was a very unnewsy primary in the sense that everything happened exactly the way it was probably foreordained to happen. Bill, what's his face? Donald John Trump, former president, swept the primary. He inspired Ron DeSantis to drop out of the race, which just leaves Nikki Haley. And I don't know, why don't we start with the politics guy? Ed, what was your take on all of this?
One, Biden got more votes than Donald Trump.
What? Really?
Because he was a write-in candidate.
He was a write-in candidate.
Well, the bottom line is the percentage was large, and number two, Republicans did not turn out in the numbers that they expected.
Okay.
And also, in fact, Haley did better than was planned. And it's a growing trend across the country. We saw that more in Pennsylvania. The poll I released late last week that Allan published is that you're seeing the soft belly of Donald Trump. Okay, because the fact that she got up to 46%, he got over 54, but that's not the number he should be at. Because typically, with his name recognition and background and support of his base, tells you that soft support, independence. That's one reason why Nikki Haley is getting money, because right now the Koch brothers still have $100 million to spend against Trump that they raised prior to the primary thing. So the reason Haley's still in, because the Koch brothers says, you stay in until we tell you you're done.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. That take has started to come out since Tuesday. That this is, for all of this talk about Trump sweeping the field and, knocking out Vivek, what's his face, and knocking out DeSantis and Haley hanging on, it really doesn't mean all that much, because there is still a huge, huge, huge general election disapproval, or among general election voters, disapproval of Trump, and even in his own party, which I think is reflected by that. Steve.
I have a question for Ed.
it seems to me, and this is not as a pollster or any real political person, just reading, he's going crazier and crazier, it seems to me. His statements are crazier and crazier, not just about Nikki Haley. And he said some really awful things about her. I don't have any use for her, but my God, the way he talked about her.
Yeah.
Are you seeing anything in there that, or in anybody's polls, that the crazier that he gets, the more people he tends to offend and more people he gets to thinking, wait a minute, we can't have this guy again.
Well, let me basically, when I did the Republican primary here in Michigan, he doesn't have the number lockup that you would expect. Okay. Bottom line is Donald Trump, only 18% of his vote goes to undecided among straight Republicans in a statewide poll. 90% of Biden votes for him on the Democratic side. There's that softness. And number two, he is so much under, from a psychological, from my psychology background, he's so much pressure on now. He cannot afford to have anybody say anything negative about him because his mind can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, he does not like women. He usually uses them. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so now he has a woman that's dominating his field. And that's what gets them. And so the bottom line, this is an oral erosion. And you got to remember, Donald Trump owns the Republican Party nationally over $100 million that he borrowed last cycle. Mm-hmm. And so they're not really happy with him. And so the fact that that's why I'm saying is there's a lot of money people who really want to hurt him.
But here's my difficulty with this. This all runs contrary to what we're seeing with all these Republicans who you wonder if they really like them and really support them, falling into line and endorsing them and supporting them. The traditional, quote, Republican Party, I'm not sure what that is anymore, have all fallen in line. I mean, God, the RNC has become so anti-democratic, declaring Trump the presumptive victor.
Right. They want it. Yeah. The RNC members, now they're trying to make a distinction that Ronna Romney McDaniel was not the one who proposed this, but they wanted to name her, just declare her the presumptive candidate. And Trump said, no, it's not good for unity here. But when we talk about sucking up to Trump, we have a little video here.
Yeah, somehow there's always a gullible new Republican who comes along thinking things will be different for them, like South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, who seems desperate to be Trump's next VP. Scott publicly sucked up to Trump at Trump's victory speech in New Hampshire on Tuesday when Trump asked him about Haley, who, as governor of South Carolina, appointed Scott to the Senate.
Did you ever think that she actually appointed you, Tim? And think of it, appointed, and you're the senator of his state, and she endorsed me. You must really hate her. No, it's a shame. It's a shame. Uh-oh.
I just love you.
No, that's
Two things in that. One, he says she endorsed me, which is wrong. But the other one is, you notice it's like he's standing there. He's like, oh, my God, a black man. He like freaks out. Like he stands back, goes, oh, my God.
That is the definition of cringe. I mean, there's something that when these Republicans kind of roll on their belt, roll at the feet of this ogre. It's just like, ooh, it's like biting into aluminum foil. It's awful. But that video showed some interesting things. First of all, you had Trump holding up his hand, which is really small. It's just, interesting. And at one point he turns and you can kind of see the seam in his hair. And, it's just, ooh. And also he knows, I believe he has upgraded his bronzer to a shade known as Chernobyl. And it's like this, I mean, he really looks, and as Ed said, he sounds crazier. Steve said he sounds crazier and crazier these days.
And I think he does sound crazier, but to take it away from Trump for a moment, God forbid that we shouldn't talk about him. This is, I don't have much use for Scott. I just don't. He's very conservative, but he is not this kind of individual. He's not the kind of politician who goes after somebody else, who talks about hating somebody else. I think that comment by Trump made Scott very uncomfortable, which is why I think he stepped forward. And I think he didn't know what else to say. Donald Trump is used to using people that way, and that's why he did it.
And I suppose we all saw that Tim Scott is now officially engaged to his Canadian girlfriend, which caused, I think, Dan Savage to tweet what he's really committing to the bit. So anyway,
she's a bot. She's a Russian bot.
Yeah, she's a pretty lady. But I mean, he tweets this picture of him on one knee on the beach, offering her the ring, which is, right there. It's like they're seemingly alone on this beach. And of course, as somebody who's worked with photographers for my entire career, I'm like, so they were just, this photographer just happened to be trailing along, and she's so surprised. But anyway, so anything else? Anything else about New Hampshire? I'm finding these early primaries to be incredibly depressing and anticlimactic. I mean, we know how they're going to end, but some of the things that I have read coming out of the mouths of real American voters, it's just, talk about cringe. It's just, it makes you worry about the future of the country.
Ed, what do you? Ed and I were talking earlier about Nikki Haley staying in the race, and no matter what happens, she's a winner out of this. Is that how you still see that? Oh, I think
Ed?
You're on mute. Maybe no.
Basically, what's going on is Haley's got to look for her future. Okay, the Koch brothers wouldn't keep funding her despite what's going on because she's looking in 4 years. She starts building a name recognition and builds a base. Remember, Debbie Stabenow did the same thing in 1994. She ran and she knew what she was going to lose for governor against Wolpe. Okay, she was preparing for 2000 when she was looking for Congress and then ended up running in Senate. Haley's in a great position, so it's to her success that as long as she doesn't go crazy, goes moderate or liberal, it's good for her.
Mm-hmm.
And the other question I have, what is up on Fox News? They're always talking about Michelle Obama. She has said she's had absolutely no interest in running. What do you make of that?
What are they saying about her?
They're saying,
she's going to run.
Yeah, she's going to run. They're preparing. Obama's.
Oh God, it's blood for the base, man. It's just
not only that, it's racial politics. They're off. Most of their watchers are so conservative and a little bit racist. The fact that you poison Obama gets them all fueled up. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the whole.
It's like it's rage bait for the chuds, basically.
Yes.
I mean, no one has been more outspoken about having no interest in politics in general. Absolutely, positively not wanting to go back to the White House. That the White House was a difficult job for her than Michelle Obama. I mean, she's been very outspoken, but I think her husband, the former president, wished her a happy birthday the other day and posted a very attractive photograph of her. And within 10 or 12 replies, the chuds were coming out, with the usual bullshit. So that it must still be stinky rage bait for them. So
Charles,
they hate Michelle Obama so much because she's brilliant, because she's beautiful, because she is black, and they call her a man. I mean, that's the big thing with them, and they call her Michael Obama.
Right.
And there's no, the right-wing media just is all of this stuff. It's the same thing as the immigration stuff. They push it as hard as they can. They get these simpletons so upset that they can't even think straight, and that's how you hear it.
Yeah.
So think about this. All yesterday and this morning, Fox is showing about how bad the economy is. You got to read into the numbers. Okay? The numbers are what you're seeing are not real. Okay, let's go down here to page 1 where the lady who has a farm in the middle of downtown Detroit is not doing well. Okay, I mean they're looking for something negative, even despite it's all negative.
Interest rates are falling. Our retirement nest egg is growing. Unemployment is falling off the bottom of the charts. Mm-hmm. The economy grew better than expected in the October to November. I mean, I don't know what these people are talking about.
But I think that's a great question for Ed. Ed, why? Given the economy, because I do think that Clinton was right. It's the economy, stupid. Why is Biden polling so badly? I mean, does the age trump the economy issue?
What's happening here is that you're starting to see the U of M index is starting to go up. Okay, what you're finding is that the numbers are going up amongst those who don't go to McDonald's. Okay, it's $40 to take your family out for two sometimes. I mean, you buy a burger thing, it's like $12, $15. So some of the day-to-day stuff is not going down, but the numbers are improving for Biden. You saw that in Pennsylvania with his boost there. I'm seeing that movement in Michigan, the movement there. It's the under 35 crowd that's really hurting Biden right now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the group that's moving. But if you look, the older that the voter gets, the better it's looking for Biden. The younger, it's worse because you still got inflation. And even amongst Republicans, it's still immigration is their number one issue. Okay.
Their only issue.
I don't want to pivot to the war in Gaza, but that is a huge factor for younger people. I mean, I see that among my my daughter and her friends. I mean, they're just up in arms over that. But like I said, go ahead, Alan.
Not going away.
Had your finger up?
Okay, I forgot what I was going to say, but I do remember what I was going to say about Charles Barkley.
Speaking of voters,
yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Charles Barkley the other night said, he was talking about, they said, weren't you going to run for president one day? And he said, yeah. He says, but if I won, he says, I would change the name of that White House.
What a funny guy. Okay, so before we leave Trump in the dust here, I want to talk about something that Saeed had picked out for this week, which is the state senator Ileana Garcia, a Miami, guess what, Republican, yes, who's a big Trump fan, has filed a bill for this year's legislative session that could allow the state to hand out up to $5 million to Donald Trump to pay for his legal defense. Now, I think on this show a few, maybe a year or so ago, I said that we needed to have a moratorium on any story that starts with a bill newly introduced in Florida, because that doesn't necessarily mean that anything's going to happen.
Cue the clown music.
It shows how the cringe, the grovel, the rolling at the feet of the dictator, of how far these people are willing to go. That they're willing to introduce a bill to say the state of Florida is going to contribute $5 million to Donald Trump's legal defense.
Using tax dollars, that are paid by both Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like saying anything nice. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't like saying anything nice about Ron DeSantis, but he said he would veto it if it came through.
That was before he dropped out.
Yeah. I haven't.
That's true.
But Ron, don't cry. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because you need practice smiling. I don't understand why Americans didn't rally behind a guy who declared war on the Magic Kingdom, attacked trans kids, denied COVID, kidnapped migrants and flew them to Martha's Vineyard, and ate pudding with his fingers.
Before we say goodbye to Ron DeSantis, and I think we're going to be saying goodbye to Ron DeSantis for quite some time, we do kind of need to acknowledge how utterly weird that guy was. And, it isn't just the eating pudding with three fingers. It's also, it's almost like he was the movie Men in Black. It's, you have to think about how the aliens would come down and they would put on human suits, but they never fit quite right. And they were always kind of like itching in their human suits. That's kind of what he reminds me of.
His laughing was even worse than his trying to smile.
Yeah. Ha, ha, ha. So Steve.
I thought that it's a good example. And again, this is stuff that Ed does on a daily basis. It's a good example of the difference between being the governor of a state, of one state where you've sold whatever bullshit you've been selling and they accept it in that state. When you get on a national stage, it seems to me, it's not just necessarily a politician. Anybody that goes from a little small area onto the national stage, there's a lot more people following them around. There are a lot more people with a lot more information about them. And I wonder if isn't that basically who ever believed, who knew the guy, who saw his personality, who was it? Why would anybody have given him the kind of money that they gave him, unless they believed that somehow a national stage would be the same as running for governor in Florida?
I know. He set $130 million on fire in the course of this campaign.
He wins the Rudy Giuliani Award.
Obligatory picture now. Got to show police once.
One thing I could share with you how important that is. John Engler was of the same note when they were going to run him for president.
Right.
But what happened was when they were about ready to announce that he was going to be part of the team to run for president, they did focus groups. People thought he was so ugly that there's no way.
Really?
Yes.
Huh. There's also,
People
this
so
has been
stealth.
discussed very much, but there's also the Casey DeSantis factor. Casey DeSantis being, of course, Mrs. DeSantis, who is so nakedly ambitious and
naked? Where was the naked part? I didn't see any.
He's nakedly ambitious. It's an adjective.
Different kinds of information in growth than we get.
She was so set on becoming first lady. It affected the way she dressed. It affected the way she did her hair. I mean, she thought herself she was Jackie Kennedy II, and it showed in every. And apparently, one of the reasons that they spent so much money on this campaign was that she refused to fly commercial. She does not fly commercial anymore. So it's private planes, private jets, the PJs, as they say in Succession, and it's just there you go. So she was a real Lady Macbeth.
Well, Nancy, did she pick out DeSantis's boots?
Oh, I think she probably had to have something to hide the lifts. Yeah, that was very strange too. What is it with guys? Look, I've known short men and tall men and all in between, and it has never been like a disqualifying factor for finding somebody attractive. Go ahead, Steve.
I don't know that.
Attractive or not attractive, what shocked me about this obsession that they seem to have with his height, this is a guy who was captain of his college baseball team. He was a D1 athlete. I mean, what's the big deal? I don't walk around. I wasn't the captain of the basketball team, but I certainly don't walk around with lifts in my shoes because I'm concerned that somebody's going to think I'm less than a man or something like that. I mean, the guy played baseball at a D1 school. You just tell everybody to go fuck themselves if you don't like how here, throw me a curveball, see if I can hit it. I mean, I just don't understand it. I really don't.
That's very true.
You got a guy like Trump who boasts that he was, some whatever that shitty school he went to, and he sat on the bench or something, and he pretends he's an athlete. Here's a guy who actually was one, and he's worried about how tall he is. Calvin Murphy better watch out, right? God, he's only 5'10", and I average 39 a game.
I mean, it's in the term of masculinity, the Republican Party, big ape. Isn't that really what this is? He's just a big ape. That's what Trump is. He's a big lumbering Oompa Loompa.
Yeah.
And so being short,
little tiny hands.
Right? Is an offense, right? Other than being the prototypical alpha male, and that's what Trump tries to portray himself as the alpha male who knows everything, can only fix everything. So it's just this bullshit overcompensation for their fear of not being masculine and the fear of the it's just it's a pathology that just continues to surprise me.
And isn't that, Alan, refresh my memory on this, isn't that something that Charlie the Duff told us, or maybe he even wrote it in one of his comments at the deadline, that the reason that Trump would not endorse James Craig for governor of Michigan when during the last election is because he thought he was too short?
Oh, I don't remember that. I think actually one of the reasons was that he wouldn't back the false narrative on the elections. James
Craig wouldn't do that?
James Craig would not, yeah.
It's kind of surprising because he seems to be willing to say anything else.
Right.
Speaking of which, I was in Florida last week, and on the last day I was there, we were in Miami Beach for most of it. I took the Brightline train, the higher speed rail, up to West Palm Beach and spent the day with a former colleague of mine who worked as a journalist, and she's retired now, but she worked as a journalist in West Palm during the Trump administration. And it was the day after Melania's mother's funeral. So we were kind of marveling over some of the photographs that had been taken that day. Speaking of height, Barron Trump, his son, is now like 8 feet tall. I mean, he towers over his father. I think he's something like 6'8" now, which is just
giant.
He's very handsome. I mean, I hate to say it because he comes from that line, but he's a really good looking kid. And but he's, I don't know, he's kind of,
you never see him emote though. I've never seen the kid smile. Never.
Yeah, he is. I mean,
If your father was Donald J. Trump, Joe, would you smile?
no, I've never seen him smile or behave like a regular kid.
Let me put it this way: there's kind of a blunted affect. I'll just put it that way. And,
yeah,
that's a little bit. I mean, if I were a parent, that's concerning. If you have a blunted affect, that's not a great thing. And, and he seems to have a blunted affect. But he's a huge kid. I hope he's playing ball. You know, I hate to waste that height, but you know, there's just of the other children of presidents we've seen playing. There's some nice photos. This kid's always very behind the scene a little bit and very timid and just no emotion. You don't see anything there.
I would assume that it's because of his mother. You got to remember, he doesn't get to see his kid that often. Remember about 5 years ago, the had to actually renegotiate the contract or prenuptial to include her son.
Right.
Okay, so there's not much love between the mom and the dad, and the son's got to see it.
Yeah.
He's very protective of the mom.
Yeah, I think so too. I would not be. Go ahead.
Go ahead, finish.
I was going to say I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the spectrum. Although that's not something you should speculate about. But there's something about. I agree. The same thing. Even when he was a younger boy, like the inauguration, he walked in that whole inaugural parade and just never that blank expression. That's kind of a singular experience. Go ahead, Barbara.
I wanted to ask you.
Therapy was a big issue. Blunt affect was like, whoa, it was a big red flag.
Yeah. So.
Did you like the Bright Line train?
Yes, very much.
I couldn't
believe I was taking this train in Ron DeSantis's Florida. It was beautiful, clean, convenient. I mean, I went from Miami to West Palm Beach in an hour and 12 minutes.
It was comfortable and
yes.
very. I took the same one in the spring this year, and it's like, why aren't there trains like this everywhere?
And I think I noticed as I was, just taking note of my fellow passengers, a lot of Europeans on that train. And I think, they're used to this kind of rail travel in Europe. And I think these folks were going from like Miami to Disney, because that's where it terminates now, the line in Orlando. It's about 3 hours, a little over 3 hours, which is great time for that kind of thing. So
I took the other one from Miami up to West Palm a week before that, and it was okay, but it was not anything like the Bright Line.
Yeah,
coming back, that was we. That's my plug for train travel. Thank you.
My friend, who the journalist there, said that they squirt some kind of aroma in the air in the in the stations. It smells vaguely citrusy. So
yes.
it's part of the sensory.
We do that in Germany too.
Yeah. Sorry, Alan.
I want to make a reference back to Barron Trump, is that he probably has grown up with his mother constantly saying, "Your father's an asshole," and hearing her on the phone saying, "No, fuck you."
No,
and
she's probably saying it in Slovenian so that he can't hear it. So they probably like three of them were sitting at a table together. It's like, look at fat ass over there trying to dipping his well done steak into the ketchup. So. All right, let's move on. Let's see, what else did Saeed have here? Oh, well, let's come back to Southeast Michigan. The Jennifer Crumbley trial is going on this week, and as always, I appreciate the point of view of you lawyers on this. Based on what happened the first day, I'm not feeling that. I think she's probably going to go down. But what do you guys think?
Steve, you're the most.
I'm interested in Steve's opinion first. I mean, he's the
criminal defense guy.
Criminal lawyers, come on, man.
There are a few things that were noteworthy. The most noteworthy to me was the fact that Shannon decided to get up and tell the jury that the client's going to testify for sure. I had drinks with a couple of pretty solid lawyers yesterday, and we all agreed that there's a lot of ways to do it, but you don't say it like that. What you say is, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear such and such, you're going to hear such and such, you're going to hear such and such. I don't think in however many zillion trials I've had, I've ever guaranteed that the defendant's going to testify. The reason for that is, although in this case it seems that I could see her having to testify to try to explain some of the innuendo basically that's being put out there. The reason for it is that if you testify, when the defendant testifies, whether it's a police officer or a mother like her, a dope dealer, whoever it is, the entire focus of the jury shifts. And everything that's been going on ahead of time, where you think you may have been making progress, getting reasonable doubt out of other witnesses, everything turns to what's this defendant going to say? That's the first thing that I noticed in the trial. The second thing, I don't follow it, and you guys know I don't watch television. I did read in the paper they had a summary of the jurors in terms of the female, male, age, and I could not believe how many fucking people have guns and go to shooting ranges and do all this other shit. And everybody's talking about, like what Nancy just said, oh, she's going to go down. Personally, I've said from the beginning, I don't think that she can win, and I don't think she'll lose, because I just have a hard time finding that all of these gun nuts that are all on this jury, there's going to be some who are going to say, wait a minute, I've got a gun, and blah, 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 blah. Or they're going to say, look, how much can parents be responsible for? Blah, blah, blah. This is criminal charge we're talking about, not the neglect, not taking the kid away. So those were the two things that I was astounded by, the number of people that own guns that are on the jury.
I'm curious about that, Steve. Jury selection is a difficult thing, and people make all kinds of assumptions. When I try cases, I do mock juries all the time, because I found that, candidly, I was often wrong about the kinds of people that I would want on a jury. When I did the Pew trial, I mocked that 4 times, and I found out that the absolute worst jurors were Black older women. Surprised me. I would have thought that was wrong.
And why was that? What was?
They tended to be fairly homophobic.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that I've learned in my trials is you don't want people on a jury that are too much like your client. For example, I used to try a lot of press cases where people would get limbs stuck in a press machine in the auto factories, and
not newspapers. Thank you.
Yeah, people would. I've done a couple of those. People, if you got people who ran those machines on the jury, they would always say, "I would never do that." They were lying to themselves, because, in fact, there's not a guy who's a person, man or woman, who's ever run a press who didn't try to swipe a piece out of the press or do something that wasn't all that safe. But they convinced themselves they would never do that. So these people who own guns, I'm convinced, though I know it's not true, that they would say, oh, I'd always lock my gun. My kid would never have access to my guns. So I think that's a little dangerous. I tend to think, and I don't know these women who are defending these two parents, but I think they may be a little out of their league in terms of this trial. I couldn't believe that they said that she would testify. I couldn't believe this jury, the jury that they picked. I have a feeling the prosecution's not all that upset about it. But in terms of her testifying, I was involved in the trials. I don't know how much of this has become public and how much isn't public, but I was in depositions with school board members. So I've seen some of this evidence that they're going to use to cross-examine her. I would struggle on a decision on whether to put her on the witness stand.
Just one other thing. When you make a promise to a jury, you better fucking fulfill it.
Oh, yeah. She's got to go on the witness stand.
Right. She's got to go now.
I agree.
If you lose your credibility and you tell a jury, this is why you're giving your opening. You're telling, here's what the evidence is going to show. Here's what we're going to do. And if you make those promises, especially this promise with the focus on the mother, you better come through. And if for some reason you think, my God, that was a god-awful decision we made, maybe the prosecution isn't quite as old as we thought, you're screwed, because you made a god-awful, you made a promise that you're never going to fulfill. So they got to put her on the stand. And I think the jury, she doesn't seem like a likable woman, doesn't seem like a nice person. People are going to hate her.
She strikes me as a pitiful person at the moment.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think,
she's gained a great deal of weight in county lockup. She's her hair, has got 4 inches of gray roots that are growing out. They apparently wouldn't let her, get her hair did. And it's, I mean, who knows if anybody's even going to notice that. But, Lengel, you and I have been talking about this case for a while, and you speculated that if she is found guilty, she will most likely get time served. I mean, she's been in jail for 2 years now, right? 2.5. I mean, do you still think that's likely?
Since she's gone to trial, I don't know, but I can't imagine she'll get a lot more than that. But I was going to ask I was going to ask the attorneys, are you surprised that it's gone to trial and they haven't been able to work out a plea agreement on these cases?
I'm astounded that they haven't been. When you've sat in the county jail for 2 years, which is the equivalent of doing 4 years if you're in a regular institution where you can go out and do things.
Right.
I don't know. I can't believe that the defense lawyers haven't attempted to make a deal. And the only thing I can figure, and this is a terrible thing to say if it's true, that maybe that Karen McDonald wants this case to be out here in the public eye and on television every day and having the entire, even the national news. I'm in the gym. I'm on CNN. It was on MSNBC. It was on. That's the only thing I can figure, because I think what Lengel's saying is true. I think she was correct to charge. I'm glad to see that, so parents can recognize they may be held responsible for the crazy shit they do with guns and their kids. But this case should have been resolved. There's no reason for this case to be in trial, in my view, particularly after 2 years sitting in the county jail.
Bill,
I agree with Steve. I will tell you that the pressure from the parents in Oxford, not just the victims' parents, but all the parents in Oxford, for this case to actually go to trial is amazing to me. I mean, they put a lot of pressure on the prosecutor's office. That's number one. Number two, I wanted to ask Steve, if I could, a question. It's my memory, and I don't want to admit how long ago I was in law school and how little criminal work I've really done in my career. But is there any criminal prosecution without some affirmative act? In other words, negligent homicide or whatever she's been charged with. Can you do that without some affirmative act? And if so, what's her affirmative act? Is it the taking him to the gun range?
No, it has nothing to do with taking him to the gun range or anything else. The charge of involuntary manslaughter, I've defended a number of cases of involuntary manslaughter. If you read the jury instruction, the third part, that you can be found guilty of involuntary manslaughter if you are grossly negligent in doing something. They're charging her, I presume. I'm not up next to this case all the time. The gross negligence is all the stuff that they didn't do or that they did do to put the kid in the position that he was in, including, remember, the day of the incident, they're summoned to the, and it was very difficult to get them there, number one. And number two, when they
refused to take him home.
That just refused to take him home. Can we get out of here, please? They were there like 10 or 11 minutes, something like that. So no, there's no requirement for an affirmative act. The requirement is that they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it's gross negligence resulting in the death. I mean, in this case, it's because of the horror of what the kid wound up doing, the number of people that were killed, the number of people that were shot. But what they have to show is gross negligence, and that's what's going to be the issue.
Well, this was a little bit of a setup, Steve, because that's what I thought you were going to say. And given that, I'm fairly amazed that they didn't seriously consider charging any of these school people, because some of the people in the school certainly, in my opinion, met that criteria, at least to get enough to get charged.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, during the argument yesterday, they were saying they called the mother down to look at this picture, a drawing that the son had made of a gun and people dead. And the school should have said at that point, the mother said she was there 11 minutes, I got to go. The school should have said, no, you got to take your son home and he's not going to stay in the school. So I agree with Bill on that there should have been a broader range of people charged with negligence.
But the question is, remember, if you're talking about gross negligence, if they would have tried to charge the people that met with the kid or the people who summoned the parents, you're talking about a very short period of time. I mean, it's easy for people to say, oh, they should have done this, they should have done that, they should have done this. The gross negligence that they're charging the parents with had occurred over a lengthy period of time, including the day before. These are criminal charges. You can't sit there and just say, oh, let's just bring in everybody and we'll all charge them. A civil lawsuit, which I guess was tossed out on immunity grounds, then you charge whatever the right word is, you name as defendants all these people, which is fine for a civil lawsuit. burden of proof is different, and it's a civil case. It's only damages that you're talking about.
Which raises a great point, Steve, because one of the other issues we should talk about is whether or not the child will be brought in to testify. I think the answer to that is no, if his defense attorney has any common sense, because he's up on appeal and he's got his own Fifth Amendment rights. And if they would have charged these school people, I think the testimony in this case would have been significantly different. And you would have had a lot of trouble getting the school people to come forward.
Quick question. I heard this morning the fact is that the judge turned down the son's ability to testify.
I hadn't heard that yet, but he
was turned down because the judge said he can only answer one question, and that is his name. All the rest he'd have to say Fifth Amendment.
No, whoa.
He could waive it.
Yeah, I don't know, Ed, because
that's what I heard this morning on the news. That's all I'm saying.
Well, just because you heard it on the news, we all kind of know you heard it on the news. It's got a 30% chance of being accurate.
Actually, it was Allan Lengel. I heard him on the radio.
So,
well, then it's 25%.
The answer to all of this is another reason why this case never should have gone to trial. It should have been resolved. Why? Because every time Dick and Harry is giving his or her asshole opinion about things they don't have a clue of what they're talking about. The kid, no judge can keep the kid from testifying, the judge claiming he has a Fifth Amendment right. That's between him and his lawyer. If they come in, what a judge can do, and many judges do, good judges in particular, they make the lawyer and the prospective witness say, look, I understand that this could have Fifth Amendment problems, but I want to testify. And once the person says that, the judge can't invoke the person's Fifth Amendment right. That's ridiculous. So I don't know.
But his attorney, Nathan's attorney, has come out and said that he opposes.
Right. That's the end of it. I'm going to take the Fifth. Nobody can be forced to. Yeah, everybody forgets this. You cannot force people to testify unless you give them immunity. You want to give them immunity for the murders that he just got sentenced to life?
Yeah. Speaking of saying his name, as a media person, I noticed today I only read the Detroit news stories, and I've been following the live blog kind of intermittently. They're actually in the courtroom live blogging this trial. They are going to extraordinary lengths not to use Ethan Crumbley's name. He's identified once at the top of the story, and throughout is called the shooter. And that's, Steve, that's interesting to me. Because that's something that we hear a lot in journalism from readers who say you shouldn't name him because that's what he wants, blah, blah, blah. But I've always thought that was ridiculous. Go ahead.
The reason is, and I happen to know this from contact with other lawyers who were involved in the case, the families of the kids and the families don't want his name mentioned. So obviously, the prosecutor is avoiding mentioning his name because the families, they're not their clients, but that's the people that they're concerned about. That's what it's all about, from what I understand. It doesn't stop the defense lawyers from cross-examining and calling the guy's name every day if they want. But from what I've told, the families have asked and are really, really interested in keeping his name out, and that's why they're calling him the shooter.
I see. Okay.
By the way, Ed's right. ABC has reported that the judge ruled on this issue, and apparently, according to this, the shooter, Ethan, indicated that he would take the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, I mean, that's the ruling. He took the Fifth. That's the ruling. The judge can't take the Fifth for him. He has to do it himself.
Okay. All right. I'm fully committed to concluding the show at the 1 hour mark, but I do want to get to a couple of other little amusing. Let's go for some comic relief. This has been a pretty grim story to spend the rest or 15 minutes on. So I do want to talk about the Oklahoma state senator who has introduced a bill. Maybe we need to have a bill has been introduced in Florida rule apply to Oklahoma as well. But he's trying to outlaw not only the creation of pornography, but also the consumption of pornography. Bad news for teenage boys everywhere, from the Panhandle to the Texas border. This senator who has
look at all the grins on these faces. I
just love this guy's name. Senator Dusty Devers.
Wow. Dusty
That is
Devers.
a porn star
His
name.
That's
real
a porn
name,
star
as,
name, right?
as we say.
Starring
Senator-
Dusty Devers.
Senator Dusty Devers would like to ban pornography in the state of Oklahoma.
Is it because
But
he can't
not
do
if they're
it?
married.
I mean, is there a particular reason that he espoused? Is it destroying our youth? Is that
Well,
what's
he said for far too long, civil society has conflated liberty for license. These bills are aimed at strengthening the God-instituted bedrock of society, that is the family. A strong, prosperous, and flourishing society depends on strong families. So this goes back to, I'm sure, like the number 3 topic that evangelical Christians bring up over and over again, which is what they call porn addiction, which is this idea that, once you start looking at pornography, you can't stop. It becomes compulsive. And for certain, shall we say, adolescent males, that may well be the case, but it's
I just want to say that if it passes in Oklahoma, it will be called it's the not okay state.
Keep your hands to yourself.
Only one question. Bill had some comment. I just have a real simple question. How long will it be till this guy, Dusty Beavers, goes to Jim and Tammy Faye Baker? And we find out that Harry's been having sex with a squirrel in his backyard.
I completely, that was my comment. I would love to have this guy's IP address, because I could almost guarantee that it's filled with porn.
He's been watching the University of Wisconsin chancellor and his wife's vegan cooking videos.
Well, all I know is the fact
that married couples are exempt. Married
they are?
Can okay. Porn and they can text each other. It's all good. Pictures of breasts and buttocks, all the things.
Ed?
All I know is the fact is that, people forget back in the 50s and the 60s, guys used to buy all the National Geographic magazines. They used to get all the series of Roebuck bra brand models. Remember, on Sunday newspapers in Detroit, all the papers had women's bosoms and bras and panties. Come on.
The Hudson's ads.
Yeah, come on.
Here's catalog.
We know those ads from junior high.
A friend of mine came across a cache of 50s era paperback novels that were pornographic, and all of them had this incredibly high-minded thesis statement at the beginning of chapter 1, like, a look at the intimate nature of marriage is strengthening. So it was to get around the old redeeming social value thing, it was hilarious. But
there were sociology experiments.
Exactly. There were sociology experiments. So anyway, all
you were looking at in school, if you had them, in fact, was I'm looking at the woman's assets. Do I purchase it?
Well, Dusty Devers, I think Steve is absolutely correct. I wish I could show you guys this picture that's on the website that he's a very distinguished gentleman who's got a nice little crew cut. He's salt and pepper beard and clear Warby Parker style spectacles, not unlike my own. And I believe that Dusty Devers has gone there, as we like to say. So anyway, all right. Can we talk about the Lions? This is an epochal era in Michigan football. First we have the University of getting its national title, swiftly followed by the Lions, potential Super Bowl, potentially going to the Super Bowl. Who wants, Steve, I'm sure, has a very well-founded opinion on this. Does anybody else, and we're going to go to him, but does anybody else want to talk about the Lions?
We do have a video, by the way, too. So, video of inspiration.
Oh, right.
Ready?
You're built for this. You're built for this, man. And look what you guys did. You went out there, and it's another hot team that we knocked off. It's the next hot team that you knock off. You know how hard it is to win this league in the playoffs? Do you understand what you're doing right now? What we're capable of? That's 2. All right? That's 2. We got 2 to go. With a bye in the middle.
I love
Where's
that.
Eddie Brakeman when we need him?
Yeah. That is a football coach. I also like the way they bleeped out the profanity. I assume, Alan, you took this from the Lions social.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, like, ooh, boy, we have no idea what he said here. But anyway, so anyone, open forum.
just
on the
go
line.
to-
Go ahead,
Very
Joel.
quickly, some good news. There's still a possibility that Ben Johnson will not be offered a coaching job. Okay, and he may be staying with you with the Lions.
No, that'd be
That'd
good.
be wonderful.
Well, there you go.
I
Joel?
was just say,
Oh, go ahead, Alan.
Charles Barkley the other night on his show, King Charles, was gushing and saying, I have a man crush on Dan Campbell. I love the Lions. I am rooting for the Lions. It's kind of scary that, people are now saying the Lions, they're the America's team. I don't want them to be America's team because people end up hating America's team.
Well, very quickly, Alan, they did a graph of viewership of the Lions. The Lions control more states in viewership than any other team playing this year in the NFL.
Wow.
When games are on, they own more states viewership.
Long overdue.
Yes.
It's going to be a really interesting game. Great game. I mean, as a lifelong fan, I'm numb. I don't know exactly how to respond to some of this. I don't know what to do with myself. I've never had a game in January that mattered. Right?
Go to Arizona.
Game in January with the Lions. So I'm somewhat overwhelmed. I'm Felling, I think is the proper Felling. Is that it, Steve?
Velling. Why do I have to tell you how to pronounce
My
Velling?
dad's not here to correct me, but that's what I'm feeling. I know somewhere in heaven my dad's feeling the same thing. And they got a shot, man. It's a one-game elimination. They're playing great ball. They don't turn the ball over. They maintain possession. They got a great chance to win it. They can't turn it over. They don't turn it over. I think they're going to win.
Okay. All right, Steve.
That's
the
my
Oracle.
So I'm the only one in this group that actually saw the Lions win their last championship. I was 8 years old. My father took me, just so you know the difference between now with the hype and all this stuff, because they were playing at home, the game was blacked out in the Detroit area. My father took me to some friend of his where we could get Channel 6 from Lansing. Tobin wrote, somebody in the paper who obviously wasn't alive then thought Bobby Lane was the quarterback. Lane had been injured. Tobin wrote, led us to a very easy victory over the Cleveland Browns, if I'm not mistaken. And I was 8 years old at the time. So just gives you an idea. Now I'm about to turn 75, how long it's been before we were playing for a championship.
That's 1957. That was the year I was born. So there you go.
By the way, the score, I think, Steve, was 59-14.
Something like that. It was a slaughter. So
and I was 6.
But what you're seeing when you see Campbell that way, that's the stuff I've been telling you guys about athletics in general and basketball and football in particular. When you see a guy like that, and this is football, which is a very emotional sport because of the collisions and the physicality of it, a guy like that is the kind of coach that can get guys to play as hard as they played and to get them to think about winning, not just going out there and playing, because everybody's got good players. I'm telling you, there's good players in every team. Team that went 4-13, they got players that are almost as good as the Lions have. The difference is they've got a culture of winning now, and that's the biggest difference. And there's no way.
Hard to get motivated in professional sports.
Exactly, because you get paid anyway.
In high school.
That's right. And what I'm shocked about, though, is that Joel Sklar, who picked against Michigan every game we ever played all year, is now back freaking against the Lions. Mr. Negativity. So maybe we're going to win.
This is like just thank you. I'm thrilled they got here. I hope keep going. But let me just make a point. The last time they were in the NFC Championship game against San Francisco, Monty Clark was the coach, and I think it was Eddie Murray.
Eddie Murray missed the field goal.
And you could see Monty Clark praying. That's always a bad sign when your coach is basically, oh God, please. And I think when I left or right, I wept, and that was the last time he'd been there. But Monty Clark, I just can't believe. It's been that long. It's just wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful. It's just great for the city. It's great for all of us, man. I'm happy for them.
So we don't want to be.
I think that you and Joel ought to get together with my wife, who's a psychologist, and try to work out this thing about.
I'm pessimistic. Opposites attract.
I think what you said so long. I think that one thing Joel said though is true. The way you have to look at this, it's the same way I looked at it for the last 3 years with Michigan football. What you have to look where they're at. I mean, if they lose on Saturday, what are you going to say? Oh, the season, what a disaster. I mean, it's been a fantastic run. Only one team's happy at the end of the year. I mean, in any sport nowadays, you don't have bowl games that mean anything. One team's happy, but that doesn't mean if the Lions lose, people should go, oh, shit, what a terrible year. I mean, really?
Yeah.
You just relax, enjoy it. You hope we win.
Yeah.
If they don't win, you can compliment them on a great year and get ready for next year. That's how ball players look at it.
It has been a joyful time here, I think.
Right.
You know,
and the only joyful news in the news, I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably true, you know, in a lot of ways, other than Dusty Devers and discovering that Dusty Devers is this guy's name.
Nobody thinks that's joyful.
No more porn. But we like cows.
All right, Lengel, I think it's time.
All righty, let me do a commercial first.
Thanks, Charles, for letting me use your gardening supplies. I'll make sure I put it back in the garage. Man, tending to that lawn is a lot of work.
Tell you the truth, Jim, I'm more concerned about keeping this house.
What's going on?
Well, you know, Sarah lost her job 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Since we lost that income, the bills have been piling up, and we're so far behind. I don't want to lose the house because of back taxes. I don't know what to do.
I understand. The same thing happened to my sister and her husband when he lost his job. Do you know that the Wayne County Treasurer has plans and programs to help people stay in their homes?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
Yeah, go to www.treasure.waynecounty.com to see if you qualify.
What's that site again?
www.treasure.waynecounty.com.
Got it.
All righty, and now it's time for
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
Lengel, take down that comment. It's been up there too long.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, it's the traditional end of the show moment when we point out the biggest schmucks of the week's news, and I got to tell you, there's never a shortage. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Wait, we're not going to play the video? I look forward to that every week.
We did play the video.
Okay.
You missed it.
All right.
Which one? You're talking about Schmuck of the
Schmuck
Week?
of the week.
Yeah.
We just played it.
We did. I'm sorry.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
There you go.
I'll go first. My
Go ahead,
biggest
Ed.
schmuck this week is Tim Scott, who said, "I love you, Trump."
Right.
Judge would stop his speech, looked to his face, right into his eyes, and said, "I love you."
That was
The only time anybody's ever done that to Donald.
that's very true.
I love you.
Exactly.
At least not without being paid.
And not the person
That's right.
he most wants to hear it from, which is, you know, Ivanka. So anyway, Steve.
Well, you literally just stole my Schmuck of the Week for the exact same reason. Although, to me, what was the most disgusting thing about it was here, if you look at it as somebody born and raised in the city, you know, here's a brother that's groveling to this fucking asshole who's a complete racist. I mean, and he's groveling to the guy. But you already picked him, so I can't go with him. So I think I gotta go. I gotta go with Mitch McConnell. At least if you can believe what they summarized as that meeting that they had back there. After all of this, after allowing this guy to not get impeached the second time too, after all of his different statements, he's still in the back saying, "Well, the president, it looks like he'll be our nominee, so therefore we're gonna fuck up the border. We're not blah blah blah." Mitch McConnell. I thought he was kind of dead and gone, but he's my Schmuck of the Week now that Scott's been taken by Ed.
They claim that the border is wide open, that it's destroying the country, but they won't move to fix it because they don't want anything good to happen under Biden's presidency.
Right.
So there we go.
The Shonda.
If that isn't the personification of the old King Solomon, let's cut the baby in half, mother. There you go. So all right, Bill.
Yeah, my Schmuck of the Week goes to a group of incredibly insightful Ohio Republicans who overrode their own governor, their own party's governor, on this a piece of legislation that DeWine vetoed that bans gender-affirming surgeries and hormone therapies and restricts mental health care for transgender youth. To override the veto, to actually pass this legislation. I mean, it's one thing to propose this bullshit, but to actually pass it and then override a Republican veto of it is so disgusting and tells you so much about where these people are. It's hard for me to believe that Ohio has swung this far to the right.
I don't think it really has. I think it's been gerrymandered, and I think there's been a lot of Koch family monkey wrenching. But I was kind of pleasantly surprised that DeWine did veto that bill. He has been one of those Republican governors that I think his memoir is going to be worth reading, because I think he's completely he's not down with the clown, so to speak. But this is going to be interesting for them to do that.
It'll be interesting to see what he ultimately does when Trump becomes the nominee.
Yeah, exactly. Barbara.
Dusty Devers. Reading the story about him, he knocked the Michigan Republicans out of my head for a couple of days. To read all the things that he said, it just is so. It's funny and it's scary, but Oklahoma's got to be a much weirder place than I ever imagined in my life. But
real boys fuck sheep the way Dusty Devers did growing up.
But you don't take a picture of it. Unless you send it to your wife.
Don't they have a senator in Oklahoma called Long Dong Silver?
Sorry, Christina, you're off the hook this week.
All right, Joel.
I got Peter Navarro. He's getting sentenced for 4 months. Thank God. What a piece of. He's a guy that refused to honor the subpoenas, and now he's
going to jail. He's going to federal prison.
He was asked on the stand for like 3 questions. Were you served a subpoena? I mean, I think it was like a 30-second trial.
Yeah,
and I'm glad he's going away a little bit.
Yeah, 4 months in federal prison.
4 months is 4 months, man. Time you never get back.
Leavenworth. I want to see that dude in Leavenworth.
Some accountability for that asshole.
Lengel, what about you?
I'm going to pick Ron DeSantis for dropping out of the race and then wholeheartedly endorsing Trump, which I just thought was so shameful in itself. But
surprised he didn't offer him his wife too. Here's Casey.
We don't know what side deals were made, Nancy.
Yeah,
we don't know.
They'll all be things.
I mean, Trump's just shitting on everybody, any opponent particularly. He's just, and they're all just come crawling back to him like, oh, forgive me for, saying all those awful things about you. It's just that the party is he is denigrating, humiliating that party in so many different levels. So.
It's broken beyond repair. Yeah. So, okay, that leaves it to me, and I'm glad nobody else took this guy because I figured he'd be snatched up pretty early. I am going with Kwame Kilpatrick and his family. There's been some really good reporting in the Detroit News in the last week about how Kwame is back to his old luxury goods consumption tricks, and is barely he's leased a $90,000 SUV. His wife has signed a contract on an $800,000 house in, is it Troy or Novi?
Novi. But the Metro Times broke that story about
I'm sorry. Well, the Metro Times broke the story about the house, but the news had the story about the
car,
the SUV, the car.
Yeah.
There is a certain type of person in the world who simply cannot live without the best of everything. And this is what led Kwame Kilpatrick down the path the first time away from righteousness, and it's going to do it again. Yep. And I think a side schmuckette has to go to his mother, who co-signed this lease and probably raised him to believe that he was worth all this stuff. So,
well, her co-signing, she may not be. I think she may have some dementia or something.
She does have mental problems. She does have dementia. So having her sign it, she might have been told to sign it and not knowing what she's signing.
Well, that makes it even worse. All right, we'll let her off the hook, but that's terrible. So, all right, okay, we didn't quite get in under an hour, but we'll let Steve get back to his legal work. And I just want to say thanks to everybody who was here today, whether you tuned in, or are here sitting on the panel. Thanks to Barbara Ingalls. Thanks to the legal troika of Steve, Bill, and Joel. Thanks to Ed Sarpolus. Thanks to me, veteran journalist.
Thank you,
Nancy Derringer. And somebody's going to Google Dusty Devers. And we leave the last word to Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
Wrestling name.
And go Lions. Go Lions.
Go.
We're gonna win.